any claim that marriage could be redefined to include same-sex marriage would render the term marriage incomprehensible.
What do you say that this is based on?
Tell them the truth, which is that they're not really girls.
Oh, come on. I can't even imagine your relationship with your children, no shade.
You're making a lot of appeals to things, appeal to nature, appeal to the dictionary, appeal to the past.
Philosophy.
Yeah.
Anthropology.
I feel like what you're ultimately appealing to is Michael's idea of marriage.
No one seriously thinks that Donald Trump is a racist. I know we pretend because the Democrats were trying to prosecute him 4 different ways and kicking him off the...
If it's such a bad thing, why don't you believe women when they say it's happening?
You know who else also would agree with you?
I'm guessing you're going to say Hitler or something.
And all of his friends. Yeah.
It's people like you that I have to defend when I stare at these people in their face, trying to convince them to vote for our party.
So, I stumbled across this video. It's 25 LGBTQ plus activists featuring Michael Knowles. I thought it would be interesting. I want to see what direction this goes in, whether these people actually destroy him, or if he actually gets in a couple dubs, but I don't know. Michael Knowles is an idiot, so...
I'm gay married. Ooh, right? Like, what is the point of this conversation?
Because you're not really married.
I'm sorry. I'm going to outright call you a fascist.
Oh, no.
And say that what you're saying is hate speech.
I have XX chromosomes, Michael.
You have XX chromosomes?
Yeah, would you call me she, her now?
I don't. I'll defer. I'll defer to you. Hello, I'm Michael Knowles. I'm a conservative podcast host at the Daily Wire. I'm an author, and I'm a cigar salesman of Mayflower Cigars. And today, I am surrounded by 20 LGBTQ plus activists. My first claim is that there is
That's just blatantly false. Also, who the fuck flexes being a cigar salesman? I profiteer off fucking lung cancer.
no such thing as same-sex marriage. Wow.
Nice to meet you,
How
Michael.
are you, sir? Nice to see you.
I am doing well. So your claim, what's the underlying philosophy of your claim?
Well, I guess the underlying historical part of my claim is that everyone for all of history everywhere until, and I'm being generous, 2001, agreed with my view that there's no such thing as same-sex marriage. So it seems to me that marriage intrinsically requires sexual difference. And furthermore, I think that any claim that marriage could be redefined to include same-sex marriage would render the term marriage incomprehensible.
Would you say that this is based off of natural law and how Thomas Aquinas...
That's so, like, crybaby bullshit. Like, what the fuck? You're ruining marriage.
defines natural law?
There's a good natural law argument for it, but I think it's based on more than that.
It's more than that.
Based on anthropology. Right?
Well, then would you say that marriage is a set of legal rights, or is it a social role?
I think marriage is an institution. I think it's the fundamental political institution. I think, getting back to classical philosophy,
of course,
that man is fundamentally a social animal. So, I think at the bedrock of politics is the unit of the family, and, of course, intrinsic to the family is marriage.
But all of those, especially with natural law, is just an assertion without evidence to back that claim, in that we see marriage over time in various cultures has been different things.
In which cultures would you say you see same-sex marriage?
I did not say same-sex marriage particularly, but the role of it when it comes to family, when it comes to the conditions. Because would you also say that if somebody is lawfully married, especially in the eyes of the church, they cannot be divorced and then married again?
Well, I oppose divorce and remarriage, but I'm making a more modest claim than that. I'm just saying that at its core, marriage necessarily involves...
He's just anti-people being happy. Like, he's anti-people being like, yo, maybe this marriage was a mistake. Maybe we're better off without each other. Or maybe we're better off as friends. Or something like that. Like, that's impossible in his eyes. It's like, no, you've gotta stay with each other to the bitter end. Doesn't matter if you start beating each other. No divorce. It's fucking stupid.
To different sexes.
But how would you prove that? Because all of natural law is just this assertion. I can just as easily say the opposite, in that marriage is a set of legal rights.
You keep bringing up natural law. I'm actually speaking even more basically. I love natural law, but I'm speaking even more basically than that. It seems to me that the only way that marriage could have a meaning is if it involves different sexes.
But once again, you're defining that meaning. But marriage essentially is a set of rights conferred from two spouses when it comes to inheritance, when it comes to the rights of the children, when it comes to a number of about 1,100 federal and state rights.
Okay, then what you're getting at is interesting and might help us move forward. How would you define marriage?
I would say marriage is a legal contract between individuals when it comes to a set of property laws, when it comes to family law, when it comes to children, and many other rights that are conferred. And we do see that those rights have been conferred to members of the same sex. And so to say that same-sex marriage does not exist is not true because we see it.
Well, you say that marriage entails rights pertaining to children. Well, two men cannot create a child.
But
two
neither
women
can
cannot
infertile
create
couples. And neither can, there are a number of couples that cannot have children.
Sure, so infertility sometimes occurs, and that's
And
unfortunate.
so does gay marriage.
Well, no, gay marriage cannot occur. I guess.
But you're asserting that without proof. We see that it does happen in that
No,
the
it
word
doesn't.
that we mean marriage.
You
and
could
the legal rights.
You could say that there's such
Destroyed.
a thing as a square ball. You could say that, but a
you're
square ball
asserting that
doesn't
it's a
really exist.
contradiction. Would you agree that people have been lawfully wedded in the eyes of the government, and those two parties are members of the same sex?
No, I'm saying that isn't possible. So laws can assert all
But you're
sorts of crazy
asserting
things.
that without
well,
proof.
like the law could say that a black person isn't a human being, but that wouldn't be true. That wouldn't make it true.
But once again, when we get into this Aristotelian view of the world, that's an assertion. Would you agree?
You're bringing up Aristotle. I don't know. I'm not bringing up Aristotle.
Well, would you say
I like Aristotle.
that Aristotle, Thomas Aquinas, in the traditional view of the magisterium of the Catholic Church, are a view that you use to base your worldview off of?
I am Catholic, but marriage actually even predates the church. So I guess my view is your definition of marriage seems to get a little muddled. You say it's a legal arrangement of family, but to say that marriage is a
He literally just dug his own grave by saying that. Like,
your definition of marriage seems to get a little muddled. You say it's a legal arrangement of family, but to say that marriage is a legal arrangement pertaining to family is circular. Of course, it's a legal arrangement pertaining to family. I'm saying, what is it? When you say it's an arrangement that pertains to children, you say, well, okay, now we're getting closer because only a man and a woman can produce a child in principle. Now, of course, some couples are infertile, but just because a human being, let's say, loses an arm, doesn't mean that human beings only have one arm or might have three arms. We're discussing what the
component. And that necessary component doesn't come from anywhere.
No. Well, I'll give you my definition of marriage.
Absolutely.
I think marriage is a lifelong union between a man and a woman ordered toward the procreation and education of children and as a secondary matter for the mutual support of the spouses.
Well, once again, when we say ordered towards, is to look at the world with these preconceived notions about things.
I'm not preconceiving anything. I'm just observing nature as it is. No, I'm just observing nature, and I'm saying that that's what marriage is.
But if we're observing nature, we see that. Are there same-sex individuals that have entered into a legal contract that the state recognizes as a marriage?
Sometimes the state gets things wrong, as I am arguing has happened in the case of same-sex marriage.
Is that a yes? That there are couples of the same sex that have been wedded in the eyes of the state?
Since 2015, the U.S. government pretends that two men can be married to each other.
But you're basing off of that nothing. You're basing that off of nothing.
No, I'm basing it off of the Obergefell decision from the Supreme Court. They're pretending. They're acting as if two men can marry each other.
According to you?
No, according to the Supreme Court and the Obergefell decision.
We keep using pretend as if things exist outside of the institutions that we make.
I'm just saying the word has a meaning, and I gave you a very clear definition of what I think it means and what statistically everyone for all of human history everywhere has thought it means. And you've given me this kind of jumbled description that keeps contradicting itself. And that's my whole point, is I think it is not possible to define marriage. I have nothing against two fellas.
According to who?
Prove me wrong.
Prove you wrong? Once again, are there couples in the U.S. that have entered into a covenant that society views as marriage?
Well, some people in society view it as marriage. True.
But who defines marriage?
Pause. You've been voted out by the majority.
Nice to meet you.
A pleasure to meet you.
Good job, man.
Close.
Hey, good to meet you, Mindy.
Mindy, nice to meet you.
Yeah. Oh, my name's Mason, but
Mason.
good to meet you. Yeah,
I'm Michael.
Oh, gotcha. Wait, do you have a birth certificate?
Not on me, but I do have one.
Okay, well, I can't confirm that your name's Michael until I see that birth certificate just as a defender of objective truth. But we can go more into the prompts about marriage.
You could actually, if you have faculties of reason and you say, well, this is the sort of fellow who presents himself, in a credible way, and you've probably checked with the producers here, they've probably verified that I am who I am. So a reasonable person would be able to know who I am.
That is more performative characteristics? Is that what you're implying? Is that I'm able, with my faculty of reason, to assume that I'm speaking with a man in front of me? And therefore I can just politely go with the name that you're presenting to me, almost as an act of respect?
No, I just think that I wouldn't have gotten in this building if I weren't really who I say I am. So
okay, gotcha.
That would be my deduction.
Well, bring it back to the prompt. Going back to specifically same-sex marriage. You said you argued from an anthropology? That's like your basis of...
Yeah, men and women are different, and marriage involves one of each. Yeah.
What specific culture are you referring to? Because we have so many cultures that have communal relationships in which people are raised. When you said in the act of procreation, have you ever heard of it takes a village to raise kids? But that's not something that's just a saying.
No, I didn't say
it happens literally in specific cultures.
No, but when I say procreation, that's the act of creating the child. And usually there aren't 3 or 4 people involved in that. It's usually 2 people.
Yeah, but even those people that do create the child, oftentimes were referred to as different genders depending on the culture that it is that you're observing.
Which cultures are you referring to?
We could talk about the Mayans. We could talk about certain Amazonian cultures.
Well,
I recognize that they're not Western cultures, so you might not prioritize them, but that doesn't mean that they don't exist.
What was their... Well, they no longer exist, the Mayans.
Right, because of colonialism. I'm glad that you're justifying it, though.
What was their view of gender? What specifically are you referring to?
That's specifically a social characteristic that we're all performing in right now. I mean, you can't say...
No, I'm not asking your opinion. I'm asking what... You brought up the Mayans. What did the Mayans think?
That's just something that is...
But what did the Mayans think? You brought it up. You seem so confident about this. What did the Mayans think about marriage and gender?
We can talk about difference in the way that they are recognized.
Can we? I don't know that you know the difference. You said there was a difference, but you haven't explained how there was a difference. And I think this is what people do a lot.
Wait, is this prompt specifically on the Mayan anthropology?
Okay, I'm trying to drill down. Just when you say there are different understandings of marriage throughout history and time and space, I say, okay, maybe that's possible. How? Tell me, point to the examples. And you said, well, the Mayans. And I said, okay, well, what did the Mayans think about marriage? And you don't have an answer. And none of these people have answers because everyone has... Do you have an answer?
People can look up right now. If you're right near a Google, yeah, exactly. Right. Michael's trying to hone me down on trivia night right now.
No, I'm just
right
asking you to explain.
We're trying to talk about specifically our examples.
I'm asking you to explain the point that you brought up. And so what people usually do is they say, well, look, I'm sure that there were all different types of marriage throughout history all over the world. And what I'm telling you is, there actually hasn't been.
So you're telling me that a Catholic priest are the people who created like a certain ceremony within the Mayan culture? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm not telling you that. I'm telling you that if you want to listen, I'm happy to tell you exactly my point.
I'm listening. Ears are open, Michael.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mindy.
For all of history, everywhere in the world, until roughly 2001 in the Netherlands, every single culture, every polity has believed that marriage is the union of a man and a woman, ordered toward the procreation of children. And that's what it has always been.
You're saying that's the specific objective of what marriage is?
Because that's what
for thousands of years, marriage has been used for property transfer. That's what marriage is
also. It's also used for the mutual support of the spouses, but it is in principle ordered toward the procreation of children. That's what distinguishes it from other kinds of relationships.
Would you say that there's an aspect where love is important, that's specifically within this current culture? Would you say that you love your wife?
I do, but now...
Okay, well, that always hasn't been the case, specifically when it comes to things like
there are plenty of people today
who
don't love their wives.
That's absolutely true.
I suppose the difference
as I just mentioned, that love has not always been something that's recognized, and even in some couples right now.
We love people in relationships that are marital and in relationships that are not marital. We sometimes don't love our spouses. We sometimes don't love people who are not our spouses.
I think the point of what this conversation is, Michael, is we're seeing different motivations in which people actually get married.
But I'm not asking about motivations.
It doesn't have to be specifically for the procreation. It doesn't have to be specifically for property transfer. And in some instances, it can just be the union of people who care about each other.
Okay,
and the fixation and the obsession of same-sex couples is just what's so weird, specifically when conservatives claim to be big, strong men, cigar salesmen that are out there presenting this certain image. It's weird how you're focusing more on gay people than oftentimes gay people focus on gay people.
I'm not focusing on anything. I'm not the one who changed the definition of marriage.
You came in here making the claim, hey, all of these marriages that I'm seeing are not legitimate.
No, I'm saying they're not
It
marriage.
hurts my feelings.
No, because that's just not what marriage is. Like if you told me that there was such a thing as a square ball.
Yeah, the ball that we're referring to is a yellow ball and a green ball. It doesn't mean that the ball is square.
Now I think we're confusing our analogies. The reason one can't have a square ball is not because one has an animus against square balls. It's because it's in the nature of spheres and squares that one cannot simultaneously be both.
The fear isn't seeing a gay marriage and saying, oh, boo, oh my God, I got scared. The fear is, oh my God, my rights are being taken away, or the institution of marriage is degraded, specifically because we're expanding it to people who also love each other.
It's because even in principle, two fellas can't make a baby. That's the difference.
As we mentioned, there are people that are infertile that you wouldn't say their marriage is any less legitimate because they can't.
In principle, their marriage is inclined toward the procreation of children.
That's not true. Because we just talked about there were certain instances where marriage is used as a property transfer. It's not for procreation.
But again, it's also used
any of his marriages were illegitimate?
I would because I'm a Catholic, but that's a separate issue.
Gotcha.
This is the issue. I love my buddy, right? I love my Aunt Gertrude. I love my cousins, but I'm not married to them. I have lived with roommates. I wasn't married to them. Many people have slept with people who are not their spouses. That doesn't mean they're married to them. Marriage has to have a definition that is different from all of these other kinds of relationships. And the only one that anyone throughout all of history until roughly 2001 in the Netherlands has ever come up with is that it's a union of a man and a woman inclined toward the procreation of children. And also it so happens that children are raised in a much better way from a man and a woman.
This is a specific motivation that you continue to reiterate and parrot. That is just not true if you look at various examples. Good to meet you, Mindy.
Good to meet you. What was his name? I didn't catch it. That was easy. You got it. How's it going?
Good. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay. So I am not in this politics world. To be honest, all I know about you is your name is Michael, and you don't marry your cousins.
I don't. I avoid that.
So I was taking some notes here on my handy dandy notebook.
Okay.
You're making a lot of appeals to things, appeal to nature, appeal to the dictionary, appeal to the past.
Philosophy.
Yeah.
Anthropology.
I feel like what you're ultimately appealing to is Michael's idea of marriage. And that's fine, right? But
I'm appealing to everyone else's idea of marriage for all of history.
Well, so here's the thing.
You have an entire group, 1 in 20 people right now. Like, fuck, what do you mean? You have 20 people around you saying that they don't think marriage is the same that you think marriage is. And you're gonna say that everyone thinks it's the same thing? Like, fuck off.
Well, I don't get sidetracked here, but briefly to respond to that, weren't there other ideas in the past that were bad?
Well, there are plenty of ideas in the past that have been bad and discarded. There are very few ideas that have existed everywhere for all of history and continue to exist today, albeit in a slightly different form, that are bad.
So,
right?
but why am I supposed to care that people have believed something for a long time?
Well, because often things that have endured forever everywhere do so because they work or they have some tethering to reality.
But that's not true.
In terms of reality,
that's not true. That's a fallacy. Just because something stayed prevalent doesn't mean that it's necessarily good, or that it did so because it made society better or something. No.
I'm glad you mentioned the word reality, because in terms of reality, I'm gay married. Ooh, right? Like we live in a society where, if you look at polling data, society seems to be okay with gay marriage. And so if you personally don't want to get gay married, you don't have to, but shouldn't we? I mean, I'm thinking, like, what is the point of this conversation?
Because you're not really married. You have a relationship with a man, but you're not really married.
I understand that you think that, and that's fine. But we should structure, because what's the point of this conversation, right? Like, I was kind of falling asleep through all, like, the Plato and Socrates and Italy.
I didn't bring it up. That was the other guy. That wasn't me.
I know. And we'll agree on that. Okay, there's the agreement for the thumbnail. All right. But like, the point of this conversation,
I can make it very practical for you.
That we're deciding how we should conduct ourselves.
Yes,
right?
I can make it very practical for you. Children do very poorly when they are raised by two men or by two women, relative to men and women.
My understanding of the literature on this is that that's not true.
What literature are you referring to?
Unfortunately, I was not able to bring notes here. If you look it up after,
I don't have notes either, but I'll tell you.
You can reach out to me after. I can email it
but
to you.
I can.
We're getting off of my point here, and I don't like it. So I'm going to keep talking now.
I think it's
so.
You want it to be practical, and you want to avoid.
We're just
going
to talk over each other. No one's going to understand anything.
We don't need to talk
so much more than me. You're the hero. Let me talk. Come on, Michael. Let me talk. So,
if you want to avoid the point I'm making, which probably is good for your side of the argument.
Okay, if it's good for me, I'm going to do it. So, the point of this conversation is we're deciding ultimately, like, what should our laws be, right? If we live in a plutocratic society where a lot of people have a lot of...
It shouldn't be plutocratic. You mean pluralistic.
Oh, pluralistic. Thank you. See, I'm not a media guy. I'm just a guy. Why am I here? He's a professional. Pluralistic. Thank you, Michael. So we live in a pluralistic...
He's a funny guy. I'll give him that.
Pluralistic society.
Yeah.
And we should have our laws allow people to live the way they want insofar as we're not impeding on other people's liberties or harming others, right? To my understanding,
So what about the right of a kid to have his natural mother and father? Because when the rubber meets the road in gay marriage, it's not just two people living together. You could always do that. It's not two people doing those things you guys do, that you could always do that. It's the ability to adopt children, and in some cases, acquire children by going to the baby store and purchasing the eggs of one woman, renting the womb of another woman, and raising children, depriving them intentionally of their natural mothers, and that's very wrong. And that does infringe on the rights of kids.
I understand that you believe that.
And all the scientific literature, by the way, backs that up.
That's not true.
It is true.
Fact check that, please.
It is true.
Let's let them fact check that on the video.
I'm happy to fact check it for you right now.
No.
The study that you're referring to is the Michael Rosenfeld study out of Stanford in 2010. And it said that kids raised in gay households did just as well in schools as the other kids.
It's not a study.
And it was a major study.
No,
but it was wrong. It had a major methodological error. And it's been corrected by multiple other studies.
I would love to engage with you on that in a sec.
Would you?
Yes, in a sec.
I think you would not like to engage on that.
My point is the majority of people in society are okay with these things. And society's laws should reflect what the majority of people are okay with.
The majority of people were okay with slavery for much of the 19th century. So should society's laws just reflect that?
Wait, so now things that happen in the past are bad?
Some things that happen in the past are bad. Some things are good. But some things are good.
But the thing is,
some things that are happening now are very bad too, and are contrary to reason.
The problem is that slavery is bad. Gay marriage, gay adoption, things like that are not bad.
They are bad.
No.
And gay marriage is non-existent, and gay adoption is bad.
Then how am I gay married if it doesn't exist?
You're not.
I'm having an existential crisis after this.
You're not. People have all.
See me? No, you guys see me?
You exist, but gay marriage does not exist.
Okay.
And gay adoption is very bad for the kids. I'm not even knocking the guys who want to do it. I understand there's a natural longing to have kids, and homosexuals in a same-sex union can't create kids, which is part of the reason why it's not marriage. But it's still bad for the kids.
Okay. Well, I thank you for correcting me on the word plutocratic.
This guy, it's like he's purposely creating political positions to defend his just homophobia. Like, that's all it is. Like,
I otherwise completely disagree with everything you said.
All right. Well,
and I think most people do too, and that's why the laws don't reflect your opinions on this.
Most people around the world agree with what I said.
All right, guys.
All right.
That's it for this claim. Please return to your seat.
Thank you. Thanks. My next claim is that
you see that look on his face? He's so mad.
My next claim is that transgenderism should be eradicated from public life entirely.
Hi.
Hello.
Blossom. She, her, hers powerhouse.
Blossom Powerhouse. Lovely to meet you.
Yes. Go ahead. I want to know your ideology around transgenderism, something that doesn't exist. It just sounds more like conservative propaganda. So I kind of want to know a little bit more about what you're trying to communicate.
Okay. I think for all of history everywhere, people have understood the human person to have something to do with his body. So like your body has something to do with who you are. Now there is an alternative view, which is called Gnosticism. It's a view that our bodies don't really have anything to do with who we are, that the body is maybe even evil, and that our true selves have no connection to our bodies. And I see in the transgender ideology a kind of Gnosticism that says that you could look like a man, you could have a man's genetics, you could have a man's genitals, you could have a man's everything, but if you feel on some deep level that you're really a woman, then you are really a woman. And I don't think that's true, and I think that the social effects of that are really bad because it leads to the depriving women of their legitimate rights. In some cases it leads to rapes, notably in the last few years, and it also leads to women losing their sports competitions and their scholarships, and it's just disordered and false. And it also leads to more people adopting this identity, which leads to very high rates of anxiety, depression, and suicide. So it's bad for everyone, and it's not grounded in reality.
Oh, I don't even think you understand what you say sometimes. I don't think you even understand what you say, because when we talk about these rape cases of women in the restroom, they're coming from cis men like you. So let's be very clear where it's
that's
coming
not
from.
true. In 2021,
excuse me, do not interrupt a black trans woman.
I'm just trying to correct you. Well, I would never interrupt a black woman.
No, thank you.
Here's
the thing about me, as a black trans woman, I am not a threat to cis women, and I think it is harmful that you are going around here spewing that rhetoric, weaponizing this rhetoric against trans people.
Weaponizing facts?
Transgenderism does not exist. We as trans people exist. We are 1% of the population, and there is a lot of power in the trans identity, because you are sitting here spewing something to me that doesn't really exist.
I'm not spewing anything. I'm just stating facts plainly.
I have lived experience. You don't, and you never will. But I do have a question for you.
I have lived experience.
What if one of your
alive.
What if one of your kids came out as trans? How would you
God
react
forbid.
to that?
I mean, I would obviously love my children, and I would try to do what's best for my children. And the best thing that I could do to be respectful and also to be conducive to their flourishing is to tell them the truth, which is that they're not really girls.
Oh, come on. I can't even imagine your relationship with your children. No shade.
That's great. That's a great relationship.
I just cannot even imagine that. But here's the reality. We exist. Again, people like you do not have the intellectual capacity to hold conversations like this, because in a minute you're going to reduce this down to genitalia, and then we're going to have to shift this somewhere else, because obviously people like you, that's where they go, right?
In a minute, what I'm going to do is correct something you said. When you said that the rapes that have occurred in these bathrooms are cis men.
White cis men, I should say, actually.
That isn't true. Loudoun County, 2021, the big case that actually ended up flipping the state was because there was a boy who wore a skirt, went into the girls' bathroom and raped a girl in a particularly hideous way. And do you know what happened? Hold on, don't cut me off. You said you wouldn't.
A cis boy. It was not a trans woman. All y'all do is go back to cis boys. You're always talking about cis boys. I don't understand the fascination with trans bodies and what's happening in the bathroom. It is mostly happening.
I think you're filibustering because you don't want me to tell you what happened in the bathroom.
Filibuster who?
Me. I think you're filibustering
child,
me.
No.
I think that you're distracting from the fact that a boy wearing a skirt in a girl's bathroom raped a girl.
But not a trans woman.
Well, there's no such thing as a trans woman.
Oh, yes, it is. You're looking at one right now.
I'm looking at.
You're looking at me right now. With lived experience.
I'm looking at
lived experience. You are looking at a trans woman who has been transitioning for over 20 years, who has lived experience.
Yes.
You're talking to an activist here.
But your identity is not grounded in reality.
You're talking to somebody that's extremely. Oh, I am reality.
I'm not really talking to anyone because you keep talking over me.
In your head, I'm not, but I am in reality. Yeah. I'm here in front of you right now talking to you.
You're confused about your identity.
No, you are confused at the fact that you don't really have any talking points right now, because
then why aren't you letting me speak?
You really don't.
If I have nothing to say, why aren't you letting me speak?
Put me on your show. How about that?
Then it would become your show, I think.
Oh yeah, I should have a show. I should have a show.
In 2018, there were 2 rapes in bathrooms, and one in Wisconsin, one in Georgia.
From men,
also because of the transgender identity.
But say it, cis men.
If you're going to describe a boy who wears a skirt and goes into a girl's bathroom as a cis man, no, I didn't.
No, you are. This is the example that you run to. Past that, you have nothing.
I've just given you 3 examples.
Nothing.
I've given you 3 examples in recent years.
You don't. You've been struggling this entire time.
News to me. Have I?
Yeah, you have.
I think the trans lady doth protest too much, methinks.
Bye. Goodbye.
Perhaps I'll see you on my show.
Yes, invite me.
Yeah.
Get my email. Tell your people to get my email address. How about that?
Yeah.
Good job.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, so if we're gonna think about women getting raped in bathrooms, right? It's a small percentage of trans people that are doing it. I'm not denying that that's happening because it is a reality and it's an awful thing for women to have to go through.
Yeah.
But then what are we doing about the men that are the 93% of sexual violence towards women?
No, hopefully arresting them and putting them in prison.
And what are you doing before that? Why are men the highest percentage for this? If it's such a bad thing for trans women to use the bathroom when a very, very, very small amount of women are being raped by trans women, why are we not having any sort of things before for men?
I think we try to enforce our laws and protect people from rape. And so we take...
Apparently not very well.
No, I think relatively well. We have a relatively low rate of these kinds of violent crimes compared to other places in the world. But in one area, we're talking about men forcing themselves into women's bathrooms. This is one area where we don't need to allow them to do that. It's a needless risk. It's based on a false view of reality and claims of rights, so-called rights, from confused men that infringe on the legitimate rights of women, not just in bathrooms, but also in sports competitions, also in scholarships, also in just about anywhere else in society. So I think that we have the right to insist upon some kind of reality, because I think not only will that be better for women, not only will that be better for society broadly, but that especially will be better for the individuals who are confused about their gender identity.
And how are you going to prevent trans women from using the female bathroom? How are you going to tell? What's the tea?
There are some giveaways, contrary to what the trans activists
and what are
say. Men who identify as women, you can usually tell.
And what are they? You can tell all you want.
Yeah, broad shoulders, Adam's apple, and like the face, and
Right.
Yeah. You can tell. You can usually tell.
Usually.
Not all the time, but usually, yeah.
Okay. So if you can only usually tell, what are you going to do to prevent it?
Well, look, a man who doesn't even identify as trans, a man who's just a nefarious fellow could sneak into a woman's bathroom. And so we have to enforce the law.
93%, because what are you doing about men?
We should enforce the law against people who break it.
And what are you doing before that? Like, why is it a continuous pattern for men
we teach
to do
people
this?
in class.
You're not teaching them very well, apparently. I mean, we have Republican parties who are literally putting a president who is a felon who has sexually assaulted people. What does that say to men?
Yeah, no one really buys that.
I bought it.
No one really buys that. No one seriously thinks that Donald Trump is a rapist. I know we pretend because the Democrats were trying to prosecute him 4 different ways and kicking him off
If rape is such a bad thing, why don't you believe women when they say it's happening? Because you're not believing Trump when he says that he didn't do it. You're, whatever, but you're not believing the woman.
Yeah, the claim you're making about Trump
because he hates women. He hates women. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. I'm going to take a toke. Michael Knowles is like the Paris Hilton of the media. He's such a fucking whore.
Criminally prosecuted. It comes from about 30 years ago from a woman who previously said that she likes rape and finds it, scintillating. Gross. And I know it's terrible. So anyway, women
has ever said that.
That woman did, and I know it's to go from a woman who previously said that she likes rape and finds it, scintillating. Gross. And I know it's terrible. So anyway, women
has ever said that.
That woman did. The Trump's accuser literally said that to Anderson Cooper on CNN. But
sure, I'm sure a fetish with like consenting adults might be different, but no woman knowingly goes out into this world and says, "I love to be raped."
I'm just using the example you brought up, which is the accuser of Donald Trump. But anyway, no one really believes Trump's a rapist, and so your question is, why don't we? Okay, I guess maybe some people in this room. You ask, why don't we just believe all women all the time? Well, I do think we should give a lot of deference to people who are accusing others of crimes. And so, we have courts of law to adjudicate these claims. So, I don't know. I don't think women are incapable of lying, but I do think that we should protect their legitimate political rights.
Even when women do lie, though, it's a very, very, very small percentage. Point blank, period. So, what again are you doing? Like, you care to claim about women so much because trans people in the bathroom is so scary.
My claim
what
here
are we doing
is
in other areas?
My actual claim here is that transgenderism is false and we should eradicate it from public life because it's harmful to everyone.
Boo! You stink!
Okay.
That's my actual. If you want to talk about the claim, we're actually
that then. Yeah. What does transgenderism in public look like to you?
It's allowing men to be treated for the purposes of the law as women. It's men taking 900 sports trophies from women in recent years.
And they didn't take 900.
They took 900. There's a report just came out from the United Nations, actually. 890 trophies and medals across 600 women who were competitors, across 29 different sports and 400 competitions. That came out like yesterday.
And they deserved them.
It didn't happen, and they deserve them. Okay, that is the logic I hear from the pro-trans crowd. Yeah.
Thank you. They do deserve them because I'm sure they followed the specifications for the sport, and that's why they were there in the first place.
Hello.
Hello. So I think I want to start off by asking you what your solution is to, like, the word eradicating. Like, what do you mean by that?
Well, the word literally means to pull up by the root. So not just to have some half measure where you say, okay, we're only going to trans kids after the age of 9, but under the age of 9, okay, we're only going to let men identify women go to this bathroom, but not that sports anymore. I don't think a half measure makes any sense. In fact, I think a lot of the conservative arguments...
You're not answering my question. What's the solution?
Oh, it means to uproot it.
How do you do that? I want to know how you're going to uproot an entire percentage of people.
I'm not uprooting people. I would return American public law to what it was before roughly 2015.
I don't understand the perspective of how you or the Conservative Party is going to make any sort of progress in eradicating an entire percentage. I think it's just
we're not eradicating people. You're trying to say that because it makes us look crazy.
That's what you're saying.
No, I said I want to eradicate a whole ideology of transgenderism.
Trans people. That is going to be people that you are taking.
Like if I want to eradicate poverty, that doesn't mean I want to kill all the poor people.
I'm not saying
quite the opposite,
I'm not saying that you want to kill. I'm asking you what your plan, like what in the best case scenario, how are you going to get people to stop being trans?
I think we're going to tell boys that they're not girls.
So we're going to tell boys that they're not girls and they're going to listen.
Yeah, basically.
Really?
Yeah, that's what we've done for most of this.
That happened to me, and I can promise you to God that I didn't listen.
Yeah, well, because we live at a time that is affirming the transgender delusion. But if we lived at a more sensible time, probably you would have listened, and you might have had some. And I think we should just return to a more sensible kind of politics.
But what is yours? You're not giving a solution on how you would even be capable of doing something.
Yeah, I think I am. I think we kick the fellas out of the boys' bathroom. We kick the transgender teaching out of schools.
How are you going to do that?
We just enforce the law as it was before 2015.
There was a law prohibiting trans women to go into the women's bathroom or trans men going into the men's bathroom.
Yeah, it's there in the term women's bathroom.
That's a law.
That's why men can't go in.
That's a law.
Yeah. Yes, there are all sorts of laws against public indecency, for one, against men going into women's sports leagues. There are all sorts of regulations against that, or at least there were until recently. We did not have established in public life transgenderism until very, very recently.
That's not true.
That's
not true. What about the two-spirited people?
What is the two-spirited people?
In the indigenous community, they are, I don't want to get into semantics, but I know that the fact is that there has always been trans people.
Do you know where the phrase two-spirited came from?
I don't. Please enlighten me.
It came from the 3rd annual Intertribal Native American First Nations Gay and Lesbian Americans Conference in 1990. And the woman who coined that term...
I just don't think that that's true.
It's true. The woman who coined that term admitted... Hold on. Let me just finish my point on this. The woman who coined that term, Maya Laramie, admitted somewhat recently that the term two-spirit came to her in a dream in 1990. Now, the Ojibwe Nation actually has translated this term. It's the Niche Mani Duwag, but they translated it from the English in 1990.
How you're capable of eradicating an entire percentage of people by setting laws, because people are
I think you're choosing not to hear what I'm saying, because I'm saying we don't want to eradicate any people. We want to eradicate
in the prompt?
But the other word is transgenderism, which is an ideology, not a group of people.
I am a transgender person. You can't just
you are
skip
a confused
over that
person, but
I'm
you're not,
babe. I'm so secure in myself, and there's other women in this room that are also trans, have been trans for 20 plus years, 7 years, babe, that know exactly what they're doing.
You're confused because it's not possible for a man to become a woman.
How are you capable of looking at somebody without knowing their bodily autonomy, knowing anything that's going on with their medical history, anything,
because I know
you know nothing about
I know the
me.
Basics of human nature.
You know nothing about me.
I know that you're human, and I know a little bit about human nature, and I know that a boy can't become a girl. So that's what I know.
Does anybody want to take over?
You're tapping out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like I did you dirty there.
That was very unchivalrous.
I'll let you. I'll only take a sec. Okay. Everyone, just vote me out in like a minute or two. Okay. I want to make a very quick point.
Yep.
That was about a lot of stuff. Oh my God. You'd be great at Jeopardy. All these things.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. So you mentioned what you would do if your kid came to you and said, in a medical sense, they had gender dysphoria, right?
Yeah,
and gender dysphoria, a specific medical diagnosis where somebody's sense of their gender is not matched to their physical gender-related characteristics and or the way society perceives them.
Yep.
in a world where gender affirming care is allowed, as a parent, you still have the right to not have your kid go through that care, right?
In some places. In some places you don't.
Why is it that every major medical association supports access to this care?
That isn't true. Sweden, Finland, and the UK all just banned the cross-sex or the puberty blockers for children because there was the CAS review of the transgender
You
studies.
walked into my trap, Michael.
Okay.
I learned about the CAS review. The CAS review was done by Dr. Hilary Cass, a pediatrician, on behalf of the NHS.
Yep.
They did not find any evidence of harm, and they did not recommend a ban, and a ban did not happen. All they did was
A ban on what? A ban on what?
Puberty blockers.
On puberty blockers.
All they did was limit access to research settings. France did a similar national review. They found the opposite thing. So here's the problem.
So the UK did ban it. That's something you said.
No, they restricted it. Have you ever seen?
What's the difference?
Guns
They
are
banned it for
restricted.
kids.
They're not banned. There you go. That's the difference.
They-
So, have you ever watched a toothpaste commercial, Michael? This is my line I prepared. I want to say it. Okay,
Be my guest, yes.
You know when they say 9 out of 10 dentists recommend this toothpaste?
Yeah.
I feel like what you guys do is you point to the 10th dentist.
Who's you guys?
The people who are conservatives and advocate your position. They say, look at the 10th dentist. They're a dentist, and they think the toothpaste is terrible. What about the other 9 dentists? Why is there a global medical consensus?
There isn't a global medical consensus.
Yes, there is. Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Deaf